The mist hung low over the cemetery, wrapping around weathered headstones like ghostly fingers. Old Man Jenkins had been tending these grounds for 40 years, his weathered hands knowing every inch of hallowed earth. He paused, leaning on his shovel, as laughter echoed through the silence. 3 teenagers with phones out, mocking the dead, standing on graves for their videos. They saw him as just another old man, powerless to stop them. What they couldn't see was the wisdom in his eyes, forged through decades of witnessing grief's rawest form. The cross pendant around his neck caught the fading light as he approached them. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this haunting tale. The teenagers snickered as Jenkins approached, his work boots leaving shallow imprints in the damp soil. At 67, his body bore the marks of a lifetime spent in service to the dead. Calloused hands, a permanent stoop to his shoulders, and eyes that had witnessed more genuine tears than most funeral directors. "Hey, Gramps, gonna chase us with your shovel?" The tallest boy called out, phone still recording. Jenkins didn't quicken his pace. 4 decades as Oakwood Cemetery's caretaker had taught him patience. Before this, he'd been a pastor at the small Methodist church down the road, until the day he buried his wife and infant son after the accident. That day, something in him had shifted. He couldn't preach about God's plan anymore, not when his own heart had been hollowed out. Instead, he found solace among the silent stones, tending to the final resting places of others with the reverence he wished for his own family. "This is sacred ground, boys," Jenkins said quietly, his voice carrying surprising authority across the misty air. The leader of the group, a teen with a designer jacket and cruel eyes, performed an exaggerated bow. "Oh, forgive us, Master of the Dead. We didn't realize we needed permission to have fun." His friends laughed, their phones capturing Jenkins' weathered face. 5 million views already on the last one, the second boy announced proudly. "People love watching us mess with these old graves." Jenkins felt a familiar ache in his chest, not from his heart condition that required the pills in his pocket, but from something deeper. He dedicated his life to preserving dignity for those who could no longer defend it, only to watch these children turn grief into entertainment. "My followers think you're just some superstitious old fool," the leader continued, circling Jenkins like a predator. "They say people like you are dying out, all these traditions and respect for the dead. Nobody cares anymore." The boy kicked a small memorial vase, shattering it against a headstone. The sound echoed through the cemetery like a gunshot, and Jenkins flinched as though the blow had landed on his own body. 5 million people watching, Jenkins murmured, and not one of them knowing what they're really seeing. The leader of the group stepped closer, his phone's camera light harsh against Jenkins' weathered face. "What's that supposed to mean, old man? You think you know something 5 million people don't?" "I know what happens when respect for the dead is forgotten," Jenkins replied, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I've seen it firsthand." The boy laughed, turning to ensure his friends were still recording. "Oh, this is gold. The crazy gravedigger thinks he's seen ghosts." He mimicked a spooky gesture, wiggling his fingers in Jenkins' face. Jenkins remained still, his eyes fixed on the shattered vase. It had belonged to the Wilkinson plot. Mrs. Wilkinson still visited her husband every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers for 43 years without fail. "That vase meant something to someone," Jenkins said. "It's just a piece of junk for dead people who can't see it anyway," the boy retorted, emboldened by his friend's laughter. He kicked at the fragments, scattering them further across the path. The second boy, shorter but equally cruel, stepped forward. "Hey, I've got an idea for the channel." He grabbed Jenkins' shovel, yanking it from the old man's grasp. "Let's see if Grandpa can catch us." They began a game of keep away, tossing the tool between them while Jenkins tried to retrieve it, his movements hampered by age and the uneven ground. With each lunge, his breath came harder, the medication in his pocket feeling heavier. "Please," Jenkins wheezed. "That's my livelihood." "Your livelihood," the leader mocked, holding the shovel just out of reach. "Digging holes for dead people. That's pathetic, man." The third boy, who had been quieter until now, pointed toward a freshly dug grave nearby. "Look, he was working on a new one. Let's check it out." Jenkins felt a cold dread as they approached the open grave, prepared for tomorrow's service for young Sarah Miller, only 8 years old, taken by leukemia after a brave fight. Her parents had specifically requested Jenkins prepare her final resting place. "Don't," he called, following them as quickly as his legs would allow. "That's for a child's funeral tomorrow." The leader peered down into the grave, then turned with a malicious grin. Hey, I wonder what it feels like down there. Before Jenkins could protest further, the boy jumped into the open grave, landing with a dull thud that seemed to echo through the entire cemetery. Cozy, he called up, striking poses while his friends recorded. This is gonna break the internet. Jenkins felt something shift inside him, not just anger, but a profound sorrow that these boys could be so disconnected from the sanctity of what surrounded them. Get out of there, Jenkins said, his voice suddenly different, deeper, resonant with an authority that made the recording boys lower their phones slightly. Make me, old man, the leader challenged from within the grave. Jenkins straightened his stooped shoulders, reaching into his pocket, not for his heart medication, but for something else. The boys didn't notice how the mist seemed to thicken around them, or how the evening birds had fallen silent. I wasn't always a gravedigger, Jenkins said quietly, removing an ancient, worn, leather-bound book from his inner pocket. Its cover bore no title, only strange symbols that seemed to shift in the fading light. Before this, I studied things most people prefer to forget. The church thought my research too dangerous. They offered me this position to keep me occupied, to keep certain knowledge contained. His fingers moved to a specific page with practiced precision. The paper yellowed with age, but the text still clear. Text in a language none of the boys recognized. Perhaps, Jenkins continued, his eyes reflecting something ancient and knowing, it's time for a proper lesson about respect. A shadow moved between distant headstones. The cemetery caretaker, Mr. Blackwood, watched silently, his weathered face impassive. He'd employed Jenkins for 40 years, knowing exactly what the old man was capable of. With a slight nod, he turned away, allowing whatever came next to unfold. The air grew still as Jenkins opened the ancient book, its binding creaking like an old door. The three teenagers exchanged nervous glances, their earlier bravado wavering as the cemetery seemed to darken around them despite the evening still being young. What's that supposed to be? Your diary? The leader called from within the grave, but his voice lacked its previous confidence. Jenkins didn't respond immediately. His weathered fingers traced symbols on a yellowed page, his lips moving in silent recitation. The words weren't prayers, not in any conventional sense, but something older, something that existed in the spaces between faith and knowledge. You boys think death is a joke, Jenkins finally said, his voice carrying unnaturally across the cemetery grounds. You think these stones are just decorations and these grounds just dirt. The two boys standing at the grave's edge shifted uncomfortably. The one holding the phone had stopped recording, though he wasn't entirely sure why. Come on, man, one of them called to their friend in the grave. Let's just go. What, you scare some crazy old man? The leader scoffed, but he was already placing his hands on the edge of the grave, preparing to climb out. Jenkins closed his eyes and spoke 3 words in a language that hadn't been commonly spoken for millennia. The mist that had been gathering around the cemetery grounds suddenly thickened, swirling around the open grave like water circling a drain. What the? The boy in the grave tried to pull himself up, but found his hands slipping on the suddenly slick earth. Help me out. His friends reached for him, but Jenkins spoke again, and the ground beneath their feet trembled slightly. Not enough to cause alarm, but enough to make them step back instinctively. I'm not going to harm you, Jenkins said calmly, but you need to understand something about this place, about all places like it. The mist continued to pour into the grave, not filling it, but creating a thin layer that clung to the bottom, rising slowly around the boy's ankles. It wasn't cold or wet. It simply was like standing in a cloud that refused to dissipate when touched. What is this? The trapped boy demanded, his voice cracking. Some kind of trick? Jenkins stepped forward, his earlier frailty seemingly forgotten. No tricks, just truth. You stand in a grave prepared for Sarah Miller. She's 8 years old. Tomorrow, her parents will watch as she's lowered into this very spot. The boy's face paled. I didn't. No. Jenkins finished for him. That's the problem with your generation. You don't bother to know. Each of these graves has a story. Life, loves, regrets, triumphs. When you mock them, you mock everything that makes us human. The mist around the boy's feet began to shimmer, and within it, images formed, fleeting at first, then more distinct. A small girl with a bright smile despite the hospital bed she lay in. Her parents reading to her. A room filled with stuffed animals and get-well cards. Stop it, the boy whispered, his eyes wide. I'm not doing anything, Jenkins replied softly. She is. The dead aren't gone, boy. They're just elsewhere. And in places like this, The veil between here and elsewhere grows thin. The boys' friends watched in stunned silence as their leader's face transformed from fear to something deeper, a profound sadness that seemed to age him years in moments. "These aren't just my memories," Jenkins explained. "They're hers. The essence of who she was remains, even as her body failed her. She knows you're in her space. She's showing you who she was so you understand what you're disrespecting." The boy in the grave sank to his knees, the mist now swirling around his waist. Images continuing to form and dissolve. Birthday parties never to be celebrated, graduations never to be attended, a future unlived. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry." Jenkins nodded, satisfied that the message was being received. He turned his attention to the other two boys, who stood transfixed. "And you two. Recording suffering for entertainment. Do you know what that makes you?" They couldn't answer, shame rendering them mute. "It makes you witnesses to your own cruelty. Every time you watch those videos, every time you laugh at someone's pain or indignity, you chip away at your own humanity." Jenkins raised his hand, and the phones in their hands grew inexplicably warm. Not enough to burn, but uncomfortable enough that they dropped them to the grass. "I could show you what awaits those who find joy in others' suffering," Jenkins said quietly. "But I don't think you're ready for that knowledge." From the shadows between distant mausoleums, Mr. Blackwood watched the scene unfold. He'd seen Jenkins work before, but rarely with such intensity. The old caretaker reached into his pocket, removing a small, smooth stone inscribed with protective symbols. With practiced precision, he placed it on the ground and pressed it into the earth with his thumb. Immediately, the mist around the cemetery seemed to stabilize, becoming less wild in its movements. Jenkins felt the subtle shift, Blackwood's gentle reminder not to go too far, not to show these boys things they weren't prepared to comprehend. A small protection, both for the boys and for Jenkins himself, who in his righteous anger might reveal more than was wise. Jenkins acknowledged the intervention with an imperceptible nod and turned back to the teenagers. "I want to help you out now," he said to the boy in the grave. "And then you're all going to leave. But first, I want you to understand something important." He closed the book and returned it to his pocket, then extended his hand toward the grave. The mist began to dissipate, the images fading. Death isn't the enemy. It's not something to mock or fear. It's simply the other bookend of life. What matters is the story you place between those bookends. The boy in the grave reached up, and Jenkins helped pull him out. The teenager's face was streaked with tears. His earlier arrogance completely vanished. What was that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That was perspective," Jenkins replied. "Something you've been lacking." The leader turned to his friends, who stood awkwardly by their phones on the ground. "Delete everything," he told them. "All of it. Everything we recorded today and the other videos too." Jenkins watched as they picked up their phones, fingers moving across screens to erase the evidence of their cruelty. "I've been digging graves for 40 years, Jenkins said as they worked. "Before that, I studied things most people never encounter. The church thought my knowledge dangerous, but they recognized its value. They gave me this job to keep me occupied, to give me purpose. But really, I think they wanted me here as a guardian." He gestured around the cemetery. "These souls deserve peace. They deserve respect. And occasionally, they deserve someone who can speak for them when they're disrespected." The boys finished deleting their videos and stood in uncomfortable silence. "Go home," Jenkins told them. "Think about the kind of story you want your life to tell. Because one day, hopefully many decades from now, someone will dig a grave for each of you. And when that happens, what will be the memories that linger? The cruelty you inflicted, or the kindness you showed?" The teenagers nodded solemnly and began walking toward the cemetery gates. Before they disappeared from sight, the leader turned back. "Sir, I'm sorry about your shovel." Jenkins nodded in acknowledgement, watching as they continued on their way, their postures subdued, their earlier swagger gone. From his position in the shadows, Mr. Blackwood approached, retrieving his protective stone from the ground. "You went easy on them," he observed. Jenkins sighed, suddenly feeling every one of his 78 years. "They're just boys. Misguided, but not evil." "Still," Blackwood said with a slight smile, "I think they'll think twice before disrespecting the dead again." Jenkins looked toward the open grave, now calm and still in the evening light. "Tomorrow, Sarah will rest in peace. That's what matters." As the sun set over the cemetery, casting long shadows across the grounds, Jenkins returned to his work, his ancient knowledge once again hidden beneath the simple appearance of an old gravedigger. What's your story? I'd love to know where you're watching from. Comment below, and let me know what part of the world you're experiencing this story from. The leader's phone vibrated. One video remained, automatically backed up to the cloud. A notification from his account, viral content detected. The cemetery footage was already spreading online, and with it, secrets Jenkins had kept buried for decades. The notification glared at him from the screen like an accusation. Aiden's hand trembled as he stared at his phone, the blood draining from his face. The video showing Jenkins' strange ritual and the inexplicable vision in the grave had already been viewed thousands of times in just minutes. "What have I done?" he whispered. He tried deleting it remotely, but the damage was done. The footage had been downloaded, shared, and was spreading across platforms faster than he could track. Worse still, someone had enhanced the audio, clearly capturing Jenkins' words about his mysterious past and knowledge the church thought dangerous. Aiden knew he had to warn the old gravedigger. Jenkins sat in his modest cottage at the edge of the cemetery grounds, a cup of tea growing cold beside an ancient leather-bound book. The single lamp cast long shadows across walls lined with peculiar artifacts and shelves of worn volumes in languages few could read. His phone rang. "Mr. Blackwood. They've exposed you, old friend," Blackwood said without preamble. "It's all over the internet. The ritual, your words, everything." Jenkins closed his eyes. "How bad? Bad enough. The diocese has called an emergency meeting. They're sending someone to assess the situation. You know what that means." Jenkins knew all too well. For decades, the church had protected him, hidden him away in this cemetery where his unusual abilities could be contained and occasionally utilized. But their arrangement had always been precarious, balanced on absolute discretion. "I'll handle it," Jenkins said, though uncertainty clouded his voice. "You can't stay there," Blackwood warned. "They'll be coming for your books, your artifacts, everything you've protected." Jenkins glanced at the worn trunk beneath his bed, containing his most precious and dangerous possessions. "Then I must move quickly." By midnight, the cemetery had become an unlikely gathering place. Jenkins stood among the headstones, his weathered face illuminated by moonlight. Beside him, Mr. Blackwood kept watch, his protective stone glowing faintly in his palm. They weren't alone. Aiden had returned, shame evident in his hunched shoulders. "I tried to stop it," he explained. "I'm so sorry." "What's done is done," Jenkins replied, his voice carrying no anger, only resignation. Two others had joined him. Mrs. Winters, the elderly librarian who had always known more than she let on about Jenkins' collection of forbidden texts, and Father Thomas, the young priest who had secretly sought Jenkins' counsel when conventional prayers failed to ease his parishioners' suffering. "The diocese representatives will be here by morning," Father Thomas informed them, his collar tightened around his neck. "Cardinal Mercer himself is leading them." Jenkins nodded grimly. "Mercer has wanted my knowledge destroyed for years. He believes some truths should remain buried." "What will you do?" Aiden asked. Jenkins surveyed the cemetery, his home, his charge, his sanctuary for 4 decades. "What I must. The souls here deserve their guardian, even if the church no longer wishes me to be that person." He outlined his plan, risky and desperate as it was. They would transfer the most sensitive artifacts to a secure location Blackwood had prepared. Jenkins would perform one final ritual, not to communicate with the dead, but to bind himself permanently to this place, becoming its eternal caretaker regardless of the church's decision. "The ritual requires witnesses from both worlds," Jenkins explained, "the living and those who have passed." "Is it dangerous?" Mrs. Winters asked, clutching her cardigan tightly around her thin frame. "All meaningful things carry risk," Jenkins replied. "But the alternative is to abandon my duty." As they prepared the ritual circle near the oldest section of the cemetery, headlights appeared at the gates. A procession of black cars rolled slowly up the gravel path. "They're early," Father Thomas whispered, panic edging his voice. Jenkins remained calm. "Then we must be quick." The ritual began with ancient words spoken in a language that seemed to ripple through the air itself. Aiden and the others stood at cardinal points around Jenkins as he knelt in the center, his hands pressed against the soil. The ground beneath them hummed with energy, and the air grew thick with presence, the countless souls of the cemetery awakening to Jenkins' call. From the approaching cars emerged Cardinal Mercer, his red vestments visible even in the darkness, flanked by stern-faced men carrying cases that undoubtedly contained items to contain and neutralize what they considered dangerous magic. "Jenkins," Mercer called out, his voice authoritative. "Stop this blasphemy immediately." Jenkins continued the ritual, sweat beading on his brow as the connection between him and the cemetery strengthened. Ghostly lights began to appear among the headstones, not frightening, but protective, gathering around the circle. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," Blackwood shouted back at the cardinal. "He protects this place. He meddles with powers no man should touch," Mercer responded, signaling his men to approach. "The church has been too lenient for too long." The men advanced, opening their cases to reveal blessed silver chains and vials of consecrated oil, tools designed to break Jenkins' connection to the spiritual realm. As they neared the ritual circle, the ghostly lights intensified, forming a barrier. The temperature dropped dramatically, and several of Mercer's men hesitated, crossing themselves. Jenkins reached the critical point of the ritual, where his life force would become permanently entwined with the cemetery. Once completed, not even the church could separate him from his duty. But the strain was evident. Blood trickled from his nose, and his voice grew weaker with each word. "He's killing himself," Father Thomas realized aloud. "The ritual is too powerful for one person to channel." Aidan looked from Jenkins to the approaching church officials, then made a decision. He stepped into the circle, kneeling opposite Jenkins. "Tell me what to do," he said. "Let me help." Jenkins' eyes widened. "This isn't your burden to bear. I caused this," Aidan insisted. "Let me make it right." The old gravedigger hesitated, then nodded, guiding Aidan's hands to join his on the ground. "Repeat after me," he instructed, teaching the boy words of power that had not been shared in generations. As their voices joined, the ritual strengthened, the strain on Jenkins lessening. The barrier of spirits grew brighter, pushing back against Mercer's men. Cardinal Mercer watched in growing alarm. "Jenkins," he called out one final time. "If you complete this ritual, there's no coming back. You'll be bound here until your death, and perhaps beyond. Is that what you want? To never know peace yourself?" Jenkins looked up, his eyes meeting Mercer's across the distance. The ritual was nearly complete, the connection almost sealed. Before him lay two paths: abandon his duty and save himself from an eternity of service, or complete the binding and protect the cemetery forever at the cost of his own freedom. The choice hung in the air between heartbeats as living and dead alike waited for Jenkins' decision. Jenkins looked at Aidan, the boy who had come seeking thrills but found purpose instead. In that moment, his decision crystallized. "I made my choice long ago, Cardinal," Jenkins called out, his voice stronger now with Aidan's support. "This isn't a prison to me, it's my calling." The final words of the ritual tumbled from their lips in perfect unison. The earth beneath them pulsed with ancient power, sending ripples through the cemetery grounds. The spirits surrounding them coalesced into a brilliant wall of light that pushed outward, forcing Mercer's men to retreat. Cardinal Mercer's face contorted with fury. "You fool. You've condemned yourself to an eternity of servitude." "No," Jenkins replied calmly as he rose to his feet, helping Aidan up beside him. "I've chosen my purpose. Something you forgot long ago when power became more important than protection." The cardinal's composure cracked. "I am protecting the church from heretics like you. These souls belong to God, not to some self-appointed guardian." "Yet you've never spent a night among them," Jenkins said. "You've never listened to their stories or felt their pain. You claim authority over what you do not understand." Mercer's face flushed crimson. "I don't need to understand. I have the authority of the church behind me." He stepped forward, brandishing a silver crucifix, but as he attempted to cross the boundary of the ritual, the ground beneath him shifted. Not violently, but deliberately, as if the cemetery itself was denying him entry. "What is this?" he demanded, stumbling backward. "The cemetery has chosen its protector," Father Thomas said quietly, stepping away from the cardinal's side. "And it seems it wasn't you, Your Eminence." Mercer turned to his men, ordering them forward, but they hesitated, crossing themselves as the spirits around Jenkins grew more defined, not threatening, but watchful. One by one, they lowered their implements and stepped back. "Cowards," Mercer spat. "I'll have all of you excommunicated." "For what?" Father Thomas challenged. "For respecting the sanctity of hallowed ground. For recognizing divine when it manifests before us." The cardinal's authority crumbled visibly as his men exchanged glances and began returning to their vehicles. His face twisted with rage as he realized his defeat. "This isn't over, Jenkins," he hissed. "The church has a long memory, as does this place," Jenkins replied softly. "And now so do I." As Mercer retreated, Jenkins felt the full weight of his choice settle upon him. The ritual was complete. He was now bound to the cemetery until death and perhaps beyond. He would never again leave these grounds. Never travel, never retire to some quiet cottage by the sea as he'd sometimes dreamed. The price of his power was his freedom. Yet as he looked around at the peaceful grounds, at the spirits settling back into their rest, he felt no regret. "What happens now?" Aiden asked, his voice hushed with wonder. "Now I continue my work," Jenkins said, though with deeper understanding. "And you, young man, continue yours, but perhaps with a different perspective." Blackwood approached, placing a hand on Jenkins' shoulder. "You've given up much today." Jenkins smiled faintly. "And gained more." The cardinal was wrong. This isn't servitude. It's belonging. As dawn broke over the cemetery, Cardinal Mercer's cars disappeared down the road. His authority had been challenged, his arrogance exposed. He would undoubtedly plot his return, but for now, the cemetery remained under Jenkins' protection. The old gravedigger felt the presence of countless souls around him, no longer distant but part of him. The price he'd paid was great, but as he watched Aiden walking thoughtfully among the graves, no longer a trespasser but a welcome visitor, he knew it had been worth it. Some victories came at great cost. Some defeats contained hidden blessings. And sometimes justice looked nothing like what anyone expected. The weeks following the confrontation settled into a rhythm for Jenkins. His duties remained the same: digging graves, maintaining the grounds, guiding mourners, yet everything had changed. The cemetery spoke to him now, not in words but in sensations. He knew when a spirit was restless, when a grave needed tending, when a visitor approached with ill intent. Aiden visited regularly, helping with small tasks and recording the stories Jenkins shared, tales of those buried beneath their feet, preserved now for generations to come. One evening, as sunset painted the headstones in amber light, Jenkins paused his work. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply of the autumn air. For the first time in decades, he felt complete peace. The cardinal hadn't returned, though Jenkins knew their battle wasn't truly over. "You seem different," Aiden observed, setting down his rake. "I am where I belong," Jenkins replied simply. As darkness fell, Jenkins noticed a figure standing at the cemetery's edge, a woman in outdated clothing, watching him intently. Unlike the other spirits, she didn't approach or acknowledge him. When he moved toward her, she vanished, leaving behind only the scent of lilacs and a small, weathered key on the ground where she had stood. Jenkins picked it up, feeling its weight, heavier than its size suggested. Something told him this was just the beginning of a mystery decades in the making. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more supernatural tales, hit the like button, and share your thoughts about Jenkins' journey in the comments below.